Hello and welcome to another episode of He Says, She Says Film Reviews. I'm Dave G, and joining me tonight is my co-host Lee G, and tonight we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Marvel movie that is out in cinemas right now, Thor, Love and Thunder. Now, of course, this film is set after the events of what's happened in the previous Marvel films, and it sees the arrival of a new villain that I feel is actually one of the best villains that we've had in the Marvel Universe, and that is a character called Gore the God Butcher, which is played by Christian Bale. Basically, he's a possessed kind of character with an enchanted sword who is traveling around the different universes, killing gods from different religions and different beliefs that we've got in the Marvel Universe. So, of course, soon he is locked on to Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth. And I don't know how much we can say, but I guess we can talk about it a little bit because of you've seen it in the clips that have been released by now. We've got the mighty Thor, played by Natalie Portman. Yes, Jane Foster, Thor's ex-girlfriend, is back, and this time she is playing the mighty Thor. But don't worry, we won't give you any spoilers on how that happens. But of course, that makes Thor feel pretty upset because he suddenly realizes that he still has feelings for Jane and that they've actually never ever gone away. But soon himself, Jane, and of course Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson, find themselves going head-to-head and trying to find a way to bring down Gore, who I've already mentioned is played by Christian Bale, who has managed to kidnap all of the children from Asgard. So, I guess we'll start off by asking, what did you think of Thor, Love and Thunder, Lee?
I actually have mixed feelings about this film. I would prefer, I guess, for Thor to be a serious character, and in this movie obviously there's a lot of comedy, and I think as the movie started and progressed, I basically had to accept that it's a comedy rather than a more serious storyline. Now, there are serious storylines within this movie, I have to say, and I really liked those serious storylines and thought that there were times of depth within the story and some serious, I guess, issues that are explored in the movie. But once I had accepted, I suppose, that it was a comedy, there are a lot of one-liners that I really loved and found quite funny. Korg actually makes me laugh a lot with the one-liners that he has. But yeah, there was a bit of cheesiness to it, I guess. The character of Zeus was not done as well as I think it could have been. I think the accent that was used by Zeus was a little bit... I think it was meant to be funny. I'm not sure. I don't know if they got it wrong or if actually they were trying to make us laugh, but I certainly laughed.
So apparently the general consensus going around today with the reviews coming out right around the world is that it wasn't supposed to be comical, that it was supposed to be serious, but somehow Russell Crowe, who I admire a lot, I love his work, and he's an Oscar-winning actor, but for some reason his Greek accent as Zeus sounds more Italian, and people have actually been joking today that he's trying out for a part in The Wogboy. So, yeah, I'm not too sure about that, whether he meant for it to be like that or whether it just went horribly wrong. And of course, as a lot of people have pointed out today, some great actors over the years have gone horribly wrong. We had Brad Pitt try to do an Irish accent. Cameron Diaz slipped up when she tried to play an Irish character. Even right back to Harrison Ford, playing a Russian in a movie once had an absolutely dreadful accent. So accents can trip up the best of actors.
Yeah, so as I said, I wasn't actually sure. Um, but I thought Christian Bale's performance as Gore was amazing.
Yeah.
It had a lot of depth. He certainly pulled off, the bad character, if you want to put it that way. And I think, yeah, I was really quite amazed at that character. Um, I thought Natalie Portman did a good job as Jane, and Chris was good as Thor as well. I think it was just more accepting that it was comedy. Now, when I saw the previews or the shorts to the movie, I actually was put off by it. It didn't make me want to see it, and which is unusual because I love these sorts of movies. So I actually think that the previews didn't do it justice, and I actually enjoyed the movie a lot more than what I thought I would from the previews. So, yeah, I actually really enjoyed the film. I had a lot of laughs. I noticed that the crowd or the audience that was in our screening was laughing a lot at the one-liners. But I did notice that a lot of the serious actual reviewers or media reviewers, they weren't laughing so much. And I think that it's going to be one of those movies where probably hardcore Marvel fans, if you know your comics and want to see Thor as as a god, as a respected god, as a powerful god, not to be laughed at or to see as comical, I think there's going to be a difference in opinion as to whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I think what makes it even worse is you have the first two Thor movies where Thor was the all-powerful god and an intelligent person. Like, even when we see him in the first Avengers movie, when it comes to wit and intelligence, he's equal to Tony Stark and people like that. Even though they do play it a little bit that he doesn't understand humanity and how humanity works. But I just don't get it, because I am a huge fan of Taiki Waititi's films when he does comedy. I loved Hunt for the Wilder People. I loved What We Do in the Shadows, and his movie Jojo Rabbit a couple of years ago was one of my favourite films of that year. But I just don't understand why he doesn't get, with this franchise, when to put comedy in and when to hold back. Of course, one of my big issues with Thor Ragnarok was Thor and the Hulk cracking jokes while Asgard was being destroyed. Like, Thor was watching his ancestors and his relatives die. And this time around, I knew it was going to hit harder because I've read the comics, that I knew the comic that this film was based on. I knew what was coming in this film, and I was thinking at the time, how can you possibly put comedy into such a storyline with some of the things that are being dealt with? And the thing is, I found that there was times when the comedy did work. Like early on, Asgard is now a tourist attraction, and you have this really funny scene where you have Matt Damon, Luke Hemsworth, and Sam Neill playing out what happened in the original Thor movie with Loki, Thor, and his dad. And that worked. That was a time when Taiki Waititi's humour worked, but it then felt like, once again, we had this dumb, goofy Thor, which doesn't match what he was when he originally came into the Marvel Universe, which just seems a little bit out of place. But to his credit, I thought Waititi in this film actually made the comedy seep out of it as the film went on, and it became a little bit more serious. I liked the idea that he had with this film, that he wanted to make an almost homage to the 80s action films like Conan the Barbarian and Masters of the Universe, where they were a little bit camp and a little bit over the top, and loaded with power metal and hard rock, which he does here quite well. I guess the other thing that I kind of didn't understand with this movie as well, and the more I've thought about it, I've thought, well, perhaps that's the way Grog's telling the story, but I don't understand why Star-Lord and the others seem so different in this film as well. Like, there was a natural kind of comedy in the original Guardians of the Galaxy film and the follow-up, but with this one, it feels like even they're different characters to what we're used to, and like I said, the only thing that I can imagine is that it's because of the way the story is being told through a character's point of view, and that's how he views those characters. But yeah, I think once again, this film had the potential of being a really, really great film, especially with Christian Bale's portrayal of the God Butcher being so well done. And also I thought Tessa Thompson was fantastic as Valkyrie. This had the potential to be a really, really good Marvel movie, but I just felt early on that comedy element to the film just held it back a little bit.
I think, though, as you said, during the film, it progressed to a deeper or darker storyline, especially when it came to basically kidnapping of the kids, which I'm sure you would see in the preview, so not giving too much away. I did like to see the Guardians of the Galaxy in some of it, but I actually would have liked to have seen them in more of it. So, I don't want to say too much there either.
And that is another problem that they now have with the Marvel Universe as well, is because when Star-Lord and Thor go their own ways at the start of this movie, Star-Lord says to Thor, if you need us, just call us. Yet when Thor is facing another moment where it looks like the entire world is going to die, he doesn't call the Guardians to come and help. It's an ever-present issue now that's in Marvel movies, and it's been there since the second Thor film, where London is being destroyed and Thor doesn't call any of the Avengers to come and help. So, it's that ever-present issue that's there now where you always wonder, well, why can't he call others to come and help?
Yeah, I think that does stand out quite a bit. Another set of characters that I really liked were a couple of animals, which I won't name at the moment because it's just part of the fun of the movie once you get into it. If you're enjoying that comedy, which I certainly did get into. But yeah, there were some characters that were animals, and they just gave a special laugh as well. And yeah, just brought something special to the movie, I thought.
And that humour works again because those characters are actually in the Thor comics. And I found out by doing a little bit of research this week that those characters also appear in the mythology of Thor, of course, as well. So that's the kind of thing that I think Taika Waititi needs to concentrate on. There are some funny things that you can bring into this series, but you need to know when to hold back and not do that in some parts as well. I actually did think that Valkyrie could have been used more in this film as well. I think Tessa Thompson's almost to the point now with that character where she could actually have her own film. I don't know whether that is something that Marvel would think about doing in the future, but I think Valkyrie is such a well-loved character and so well played by Tessa Thompson that she could actually have a standalone film. In fact, I'd probably be more excited by a Valkyrie film than what I would another Captain Marvel film, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That character didn't stand out to me as much, but certainly, it would be an interesting way to go.
What did you think of Christian Bale's performance? Because I've always been very hard on Marvel villains, because I've always had this feeling that DC villains are always so much more memorable than Marvel villains. If you think of the DC universe and you think of Joker and Harley Quinn and Penguin and Riddler, you've got all these amazing villains, whereas with the Marvel universe, you tend to forget the villains. Like, if you look back at the villains that we've had in the Marvel Universe, it's really only ones like Thanos that have stood out and have been memorable. I thought that he did an absolutely brilliant job with this film, especially considering that he didn't want to make the movie. His kids told him that he had to make it.
No, as I said earlier, he was actually a villain that stood out. I think a very well played character by Christian Bale. And yeah, I was quite amazed at that performance, and I think it just shows the strong actor that he is. And I think if you look at the cast of Marvel, especially in this movie, while a lot of people don't ever want to give Oscars or awards to a lot of popcorn movies, we'll call it that, you've got this amazing cast within this movie, and in their own rights are all award-worthy actors. Of course, you've got Chris Hemsworth, but Natalie Portman, Christian Bale, Russell Crowe, Chris Pratt,
Matt Damon,
yeah.
Or should we say Matt Damon?
Yeah. Even pop-ups for people like Sean Gunn, who I loved from the Gilmore Girls, and to see him play very different character in this movie, and he's been in other movies too that I've seen, but you've got just this amazing cast of people. Bradley Cooper, and I think when you're at that level and you've got that many great actors, your popcorn movie is not just a popcorn movie. You've got something quite special there, and so I think this movie is certainly worth watching. I would definitely watch it again myself, and I would recommend it to my friends, with the warning that if you're expecting it to have that darkness, deep storyline, there's components of that in there, and it's done very well, but you would have to accept that the comedy is there as well. But I actually, as I said, I got right into that comedy when I watched it, and I actually enjoyed it.
And a quick question, because a lot of people have been asking me this online the last couple of days. The fact that this movie was mostly shot in Australia, using an Australian crew and an Australian studio, did it show?
I wouldn't have known. It's only that you told me, actually, that I even thought about it. I would not have known at all. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm the same. You cannot tell that this film was not shot in Hollywood. It's probably a big statement for what the Australian film industry is capable of, especially off the back of Elvis as well, of course. And I think Marvel signed a pretty long-term deal to do most of their movies now in Sydney. So, yeah, it's looking good for the future for the Australian film industry with films like this being done here. So, to those people that wrote and asked, no, it's not obvious at all. I mean, there's little things that you do notice where you'll notice more Australian actors pop up in the background and stuff like that. But no, you don't notice it from a production point of view at all. So I guess to wrap up, what are you going to give Thor, Love and Thunder out of 5? I'm
going to give it 3.5.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. I did really feel that the opening left me with mixed feelings, because I love the fact that the opening of the film was seeing Christian Bale's character and how he became the way he did. But I thought the comedy that followed it then kind of dragged it back, and then it went back good again when that kind of seeped out. So 3 out of 5 for me. And that's it for this episode of He Says, She Says Film Reviews. Lee gave Thor, Love and Thunder 3.5, and I gave it 3. And we'll be back soon with another episode of He Says, She Says Film Reviews.